The sub-zero Alaskan air bit at my exposed skin. Each breath a painful reminder of my son's chilling smirk. "Have fun out here, Dad, if you make it." Connor's words echoed in the vast, silent wilderness. A death sentence delivered by my own flesh and blood. I'm Dr. Theodore Garrison, and for 30 years, I saved lives in the chaos of emergency medicine. What Connor didn't realize was that those same skills, honed in the crucible of life or death situations, would keep me alive long enough to dismantle everything he'd stolen from me. When your own child abandons you to die for a $4.2 million trust fund, you learn a profound lesson about family loyalty. And when you survive against impossible odds, you learn an even more potent lesson about revenge. Connor thought my medical knowledge made me weak. He was half right. It made me precise. The signs had been there for months. Subtle at first, then glaringly obvious. But I'd chosen to ignore them. After my stroke last September, Connor moved in, ostensibly to help with my recovery. That's what he told everyone. What he really moved in for was control. My medical bills were astronomical. $12,800 a month for physical therapy, speech therapy, medications, everything. Connor, holding power of attorney for my finances, a safety net we'd set up years ago after his mother, Eleanor, passed, now wielded it like a weapon. "Dad, we need to talk about these expenses," he'd say, spreading my bills across the kitchen table like evidence in a trial. "This isn't sustainable." I'd watch him calculate, always calculating, never concerned about my recovery, only the numbers. The trust fund Eleanor had established was substantial, $4.2 million, designed to cover my care for life and leave Connor a comfortable inheritance. But $12,800 a month was eating into his future, and he knew it. "Maybe we should look at some care facilities," he suggested one Tuesday morning, sliding a glossy brochure across the table. "Sunset Manor has excellent reviews. Sunset Manor, $4,500 a month." I'd done the math myself. At that rate, Connor would inherit nearly $3 million instead of maybe $2 million. The difference, it seemed, was worth killing for. But here's what Connor didn't understand about emergency medicine. You learn to read people. Truly read them. When someone's lying about their symptoms, when they're hiding something, when they're planning something. After 3 decades in trauma units, you develop instincts. Connor's tells were obvious. The way he'd answer his phone in another room. The designer clothes that pharmaceutical sales reps couldn't afford on commission alone. The BMW lease at $890 a month when his salary was maybe $60,000. "Where's this money coming from, Connor?" I asked one evening. "Bonus season, Dad. Good quarter." But I had seen the bank statements when he thought I was napping. Large, unauthorized withdrawals from my accounts. Transfers that somehow bore my electronic signature. The trust had specific provisions. I had to be declared incompetent or dead for Connor to access the principal. Since the stroke, my speech was slower, my movements less steady. To Connor, I probably looked halfway to incompetent already. What he didn't know was that my mind was sharp as ever. Emergency medicine trains you for cognitive clarity under pressure, pain, exhaustion, chaos. You learn to think through all of it. "Dad, I've been thinking," Connor said the night before our Alaska trip. "Maybe it's time we talk about your long-term care planning." He'd arranged this trip months earlier. A father-son bonding experience, he called it. Camping in Denali. Just the two of us. I should have seen it then. Connor hadn't wanted to spend time with me since high school. "We could discuss some options while we're out there," he continued. "Away from distractions. Away from witnesses," he meant. I packed carefully for that trip. My emergency medical kit, the one I'd carried for decades. A portable EKG monitor worth $1,800. Emergency medications, thermal blankets. Connor laughed when he saw me loading it. "Dad, we're camping, not running a field hospital." But old habits die hard. In emergency medicine, you prepare for the worst. You hope for the best, but you prepare for the worst. I had no idea how literally that principle was about to be tested. The night before we left, I updated my will. Just a feeling. Connor was in the garage, and I heard him on the phone with someone. The conversation was muffled, but I caught fragments. "Won't be a problem much longer. Inheritance tax implications, trust provisions activate. Emergency medicine also teaches you when to trust your gut." Mine was screaming. The drive to Denali took 6 hours. 6 hours of Connor being unusually chatty, asking questions about my medical career, my savings, my final wishes. Dad, have you ever thought about what you'd want if something happened to you out here? Red flag number 1. I mean, with your health situation, shouldn't we have a plan? Red flag number 2. We set up camp at a remote site Connor had specifically chosen. No cell service. No other campers within miles. I'd treated enough trauma cases to recognize an isolated location when I saw one. That night, while Connor thought I was asleep, I heard him on his satellite phone. Yeah, everything's set. Tomorrow morning, no, there won't be any investigation. Old guy with a stroke gets lost in the wilderness. Happens all the time up here. I lay in my sleeping bag, pieces clicking into place like a diagnosis. Connor wasn't just hoping I'd die. He was planning it. The next morning, I discovered exactly how deep his planning went. While Connor made coffee, I checked my satellite communicator. Dead battery. Strange, since I'd charged it the night before. My backup GPS unit also dead. My emergency beacon. Same thing. Connor, did you do something to my equipment? He looked up from the camp stove with that pharmaceutical sales smile. What do you mean, Dad? My safety gear. It's all been disabled. Huh? Must be the cold. Electronics are funny up here. Electronics don't fail simultaneously by accident. In emergency medicine, when you see a pattern, you look for a cause. Connor, I found something interesting last week. I kept my voice steady. In my bank statements. His smile flickered just for a second. Withdrawals I didn't authorize. Transfers I didn't approve, all with my electronic signature. Dad, your memory since the stroke. My memory is fine, and so is my understanding of federal fraud statutes. Connor's expression changed. The helpful sun mask slipped, and underneath was something cold, something calculating. Here's the thing, Dad. You're 74 years old. You've had a major stroke. Your cognitive function is clearly deteriorating. Is it? Who's going to believe you over me? Your own medical records show confusion, disorientation, classic signs of dementia onset. I had to admire the planning. Connor had been building a case for months. Doctor visits where he'd answer questions for me. Conversations with neighbors about my declining condition. A paper trail of incompetence. The trust fund has specific provisions, Connor continued, his voice taking on a lecture tone. If you're declared incompetent, or if you die, the assets transfer to me immediately. No probate, no delays. And if I resist the incompetency claim, Dad, you're sitting in the Alaskan wilderness with dead emergency equipment, talking about conspiracy theories. That's not going to help your credibility. The beauty of his plan was its simplicity. Even if I survived long enough to make accusations, who would believe a confused old man with a history of stroke against his dutiful son? Time for our morning hike, Dad, Connor said, a saccharine sweetness in his voice. A little fresh air will do you good. He led me deep into the forest, far from our camp, past landmarks I recognized from my topographical maps. My leg, still weakened by the stroke, began to ache. Connor, I think we should head back. He ignored me, pushing further, faster. Then, without warning, he shoved me. I stumbled, falling hard onto the frozen ground. My head hit a rock with a sickening thud. The world spun. When I looked up, Connor was standing over me, his face a mask of cold indifference. Have fun out here, Dad, if you make it. He turned and walked away, leaving me alone in the vast, unforgiving wilderness. The pain in my head was blinding, but my emergency medicine training kicked in. Assess, prioritize, act. I checked for bleeding, a concussion. Nothing immediately life-threatening. The cold, however, was a silent killer. Hypothermia would set in quickly. I had to move. I dragged myself to a fallen log, using it to pull myself upright. My legs screamed in protest. Every instinct urged me to panic, but emergency medicine teaches you to suppress fear, to focus on the next step. I needed shelter, warmth, and a way to signal for help. Connor had disabled my equipment, but I had one last ace up my sleeve. A small, waterproof satellite phone, hidden in a false bottom of my medical kit, charged and ready. He hadn't thought to check that. I stumbled through the snow, the pain in my leg intensifying with every step. Hours passed. The sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a beautiful backdrop to my desperate struggle. I found a small cave, barely more than an overhang, but it offered some protection from the wind. I used my thermal blanket, salvaged from my kit, to create a makeshift shelter. Then, with trembling fingers, I retrieved the satellite phone. I knew the number I needed to call. Not 911. Not the local authorities. I needed to call Eleanor, my late wife's sister. My sister-in-law, Eleanor Vance, a formidable woman who knew more about my family's finances than anyone, thanks to my wife's meticulous planning. The call connected. "Eleanor," I said, my voice hoarse from the cold. "It's Ted. Connor's here with me. I think it's time." There was a pause, then a sharp intake of breath. "Ted, where are you? The alerts. They've been going off for hours. I'm in Denali, Eleanor. Connor left me for dead." I heard a gasp on the other end, then a flurry of hushed voices. "He's at the Marriott downtown with your sister Katie, your brother-in-law Mark, your cousins Jessica and Ryan, and about 30 other family members, who flew in yesterday for what they thought was a family reunion." The blood drained from Connor's face. He'd been so sure he was alone, so sure his actions were secret. "You see, son," I said, my voice gaining strength, "when your mother wrote that trust, she included provisions for family intervention. If fraud was ever attempted, the entire family would be notified immediately." I put the phone on speaker. "Connor," came Aunt Eleanor's voice, crystal clear through the satellite connection. "Connor, we're all here. We've been listening to everything." "Everyone's here?" Connor's voice was barely audible, a pathetic whisper. "Your whole family," said a voice I recognized as Katie's. "Cousins, aunts, uncles, family, friends. We all flew in when the alerts triggered." "What alerts?" "The alerts your mother built into the trust system," Eleanor explained. "Automated notifications that go out to 43 family members whenever suspicious activity occurs. So when you started draining Dad's accounts 3 months ago," Katie continued, "we all got emails with copies of every transaction." Connor was shaking now, and not from cold. "And when you disabled Dad's emergency equipment last night," added Ryan's voice, "we got real-time notifications with GPS coordinates." "The pharmaceutical company fraud," came Mark's voice. "We've known about that for weeks. Dr. Adams briefed all of us." I watched my son realize that his secret plan had been public knowledge among our entire family for months. "But why didn't anyone stop me?" Connor whispered, tears freezing on his cheeks. "Because," said Eleanor, "your mother's instructions were very specific. Let the fraud proceed until attempted murder. Then activate full consequences." "Full consequences?" "Connor," came Dr. Adams' voice through the communicator. "Your family has been building evidence against you for 93 days. Every phone call, every financial transaction, every fraudulent prescription, every forged document. We have it all," Katie said. "And Connor, we're not just witnesses anymore. We're plaintiffs." "Plaintiffs in a civil lawsuit," Mark explained, "for the psychological trauma of watching you try to murder our father. The lawsuit seeking full restitution of stolen funds," Ryan added, "plus punitive damages, plus criminal restitution," Eleanor continued. "When the federal charges are filed." "Federal charges?" Dr. Adams took over. "Connor, you're looking at federal charges for elder abuse, wire fraud, bank fraud, pharmaceutical fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and attempted murder. That's 45 to life without parole." Connor collapsed completely into the snow. "But here's the thing, Connor," I said, sitting down beside him. "Your mother also left provisions for mercy." He looked up with something that might have been hope. If the perpetrator showed genuine remorse and agreed to full restitution and cooperation with authorities, the family could choose between criminal prosecution and alternative consequences. "What alternative consequences?" Eleanor's voice came through clearly. "Complete financial restitution of all stolen funds, permanent exclusion from all family assets and activities, mandatory psychiatric treatment, and public acknowledgement of attempted murder at a family gathering." "Public acknowledgement?" Connor. Katie said, "We're at a family reunion. 68 people all here to hear your confession. Live," Ryan added via satellite phone, "right now." Connor looked at me desperately. Dad, please. Connor, 30 years of emergency medicine taught me that some injuries can be treated, and some are fatal. What you did to our family, that's going to leave permanent scars. But the alternative to criminal prosecution, Eleanor said, is still available for the next 60 seconds. Connor looked around the wilderness, then at the phone, then at me. If I confess publicly to everyone, full confession, Mark specified, the theft, the pharmaceutical fraud, the murder attempt, everything. And agree to supervised psychological treatment, Katie added. And complete financial restitution, Ryan continued. Then we don't pursue criminal charges, Eleanor finished. But Connor, I said, understand this. If you choose confession over prosecution, you'll be financially ruined, but alive and free. If you choose to fight this, you'll spend the rest of your life in federal prison. Connor stared at the satellite phone. How much time do I have to decide? 30 seconds, came Eleanor's voice. I watched my son weigh his options. Financial ruin versus life imprisonment. Public humiliation versus criminal prosecution. 20 seconds, Katie said. Connor's breathing was rapid, panicked. 15 seconds. 10 seconds. Connor grabbed the phone. I'll confess, he said. I'll confess to everything. To everyone on this call, Eleanor specified. 68 family members all listening. Yes, Connor, I said. Are you sure? Once you confess publicly, there's no taking it back. I'm sure. His voice was broken. I tried to steal from Dad's trust. I tried to kill him for money. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The silence on the call lasted forever. Finally, Eleanor spoke. Connor, we accept your confession. The family vote was unanimous. No criminal prosecution, but complete consequences as outlined. When do I start restitution? The next few months were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, psychiatric evaluations, and family meetings. Connor's confession, broadcast to our entire family, was a raw, painful moment. But it was also the first step towards a long, arduous process of healing. The pharmaceutical fraud ring he'd been involved with was exposed, leading to federal indictments and the dismantling of a network that preyed on vulnerable seniors. Connor's cooperation, while born of self-preservation, proved invaluable. Agent Mitchell, the federal investigator assigned to the case, met with me weeks later. Dr. Garrison, the scope of the criminal enterprise was still unfolding. She handed me a check. $380,000. Every dollar Connor had stolen, plus interest and penalties. This represents full financial restitution. Then she handed me a second check. $125,000. Federal victim compensation for psychological trauma and attempted murder. I stared at the checks. $500,000 couldn't restore the trust Connor had destroyed, but it could fund medical care for other elderly victims. I want to donate this to the Alaska Wilderness Medical Foundation, the charity your wife specified in the trust. Yes, let Connor's crime fund medical care for people who can't afford it. Agent Mitchell made notes in my file. Dr. Garrison, that's very generous. Agent Mitchell, money can't heal family relationships, but it can heal people. My phone rang. Jake Morrison, a colleague from the foundation. Dr. Garrison, we have a situation. What kind of situation? Missing elderly hiker, 78-year-old man, hasn't been seen for 18 hours. Families worried about pharmaceutical fraud. The pattern was continuing. Even with Connor facing his consequences, elderly people were still being targeted. Where? Chugach State Park, remote area. No cell service. Jake, I'll be there in 2 hours. I hung up and looked at Agent Mitchell. Duty calls. Dr. Garrison, you know you don't have to keep doing wilderness medical consultations. You've done enough. Agent Mitchell, Connor thought my medical knowledge made me weak. He was wrong. It makes me necessary. I drove to Chugach, thinking about legacy. Connor would spend the next 12 to 15 years in federal prison. His pharmaceutical career was over. His family relationships were destroyed. His financial future was ruined. But the federal legislation he'd inspired would protect thousands of elderly people from similar fraud. The pharmaceutical fraud ring he'd helped expose was dismantled. The training programs that had turned him into a weapon against vulnerable people were shut down permanently. Connor's crime had caused immeasurable damage, but his cooperation had prevented immeasurable future damage. The missing hiker turned out to be a retired accountant whose adult daughter had been pressuring him to simplify his finances. The daughter worked in pharmaceutical sales. We found him hypothermic, but alive after 6 hours of searching. He recovered fully. His daughter was arrested for attempted elder fraud 3 days later. The pattern continued, but now we knew how to recognize it, how to stop it, how to protect people. Connor had taught us, unintentionally, how predators think. And that knowledge was saving lives. Standing in the wilderness where Connor had tried to kill me, I realized something important about emergency medicine. Sometimes you save the patient, sometimes you save the next patient, and sometimes, if you're very careful and very lucky, you save both. Connor's consequences were just beginning, but so was his contribution to justice. 2 years after Connor's conviction, I received my first letter from him. "Dad, I've been thinking about what you said about consistent right action over time. I'm trying to understand what that means from federal prison." I read the letter twice before deciding to respond. "Connor, consistent right action means making better choices every day, even when no one's watching, even when there's no immediate benefit." His next letter came 3 months later. "Dad, I testified in 2 more pharmaceutical fraud cases, helped convict 6 more people who were targeting elderly victims. The prosecutors say my testimony saved 17 families from fraud. Progress, perhaps, but still accountability without self-interest. The letter I'm holding today is different. Dad, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. I don't know if I deserve forgiveness, but I want you to know that I understand now what you meant about emergency medicine. You spend your life solving problems for other people. I spent my life creating problems for you. I'm trying to change that. Connor won't be eligible for parole for 10 more years. The family contact prohibition has 3 more years remaining. Our relationship may never recover, but Connor is finally learning what emergency medicine taught me long ago. Healing requires time, consistency, and choosing other people's welfare over your own immediate interests. Some injuries heal completely, some leave permanent scars, but the choice to keep trying to heal, that choice is always available.